Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Gibson, and we're back. Today's norm therapy-esque socialization of abuse. This is our program where we talk to a myriad of people from around the world on the topics of abuse, but also we talk about their lives and the things that most interest them and what they see happening in the abuse care industry, as well as in mainstream life. Most of our people have such a plethora of experience as well as that can-do spirit that we oftentimes find rarely in life. But also, today we have an extra treat. We have Kelly Dehn, who is the Global Executive Director of Refuge.org. It's a 501c3 nonprofit that is undergirded by the for-profit company Norm Therapy Inc. And through Arrow, which is affectionately known as Abuse Refuge Org, through Arrow, we provide services to the world, oftentimes without charge, most times, I should say. And now we just moved to the for-profit models in the for-profit side to start adding revenue streams to our work. And we're still offering through the nonprofit free services if people qualify. So we'll talk more about that hopefully during our interview and beyond. I want to say something about Kelly Dehn. The actual entire premise of Abuse Refuge Org was predicated upon her life experiences. Although norm therapy had been in the work for many years prior, Kelly embodied such the level of abuse in her life, and she was still alive and kicking and smiling. I used to ask her, I can't believe you're not jaded, back when we first met some 10 years ago, with all that she had gone through. She represents about 18 of the 21 abuses that we champion at Arrow and Norm Therapy. And so we built the entire concept of when you find one abuse, quite often there's another abuse and another abuse and another abuse that normally accompanies the initial abuse. Normally, when you see one abuse, that's just scratching the surface. So we'll talk more about that too. I hope I love talking to Kelly. We talk almost every day. We work hand in hand on many projects around the world with many different kinds of people and cultures. And she is truly an amazing human being. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite Kelly to come in. Hi, Kelly, how are you? And there you go. So tell us, how are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for asking.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. People are always interested in you for a variety of reasons. They see this intelligent and strong woman leading people every day, especially in the organization. And you always seem to have a smile. You always seem to have a joke or a funny meme or something available that keeps people smiling and keeps people, on their toes about you and caring about you. So tell me, how do you feel today, and how is that possible that you could do that every day?
When you do something that you love, I think that's what makes all the difference in the world. And I don't feel like I actually ever work, even though I do work at what we do day in and day out. But the passion behind the force, the team members that I'm surrounded by in good company, and the stories that we get to hear, all mark the cornerstone of why I think we have such an amazing opportunity to make the world a better place.
That's all. That sounds just like you. You're the most optimistic human being I come across daily. So that's not a bad thing at all. In doing so, in making the world a better place, are you saying that people who are afflicted by abuse, somehow need to find their way out of their abusive circumstances so they can find that happiness? Is that something you would advocate?
I would say from the experiences that I've both witnessed in my own personal journey, a lot of times victims don't know their way out of a paper bag, which was the situation that I found myself in. And counseling and all kinds of different methods that I had tried and explored, oftentimes didn't end up in the outcomes that I think a lot of victims and survivors hope will have that type of change or marked differing outcome.
Yeah, why not? Why do you think that was that it didn't happen?
Yeah, so a victim, if you live in victimhood and you live in that mentality that you've been abused and woe is me, oftentimes you don't know that you've adopted some really potentially dangerous behaviors that can end up being narcissistic and end up catapulting those relationships into a dangerous zone. We talk about it a lot, and I've seen in a lot of videos online where people will say, do I have a sign on my back that says, pick me? I pick me, if you're a narcissist. And I said that to myself on so many occasions. I think a lot of people find themselves in that situation, and the missing link and the disconnect is why? Why does this keep happening? Why in the workplace? Why are my friendships? Why in family dynamics? Why are all these people in my life that I'm attracting? A person in my life told me that I always attracted the wounded bird. And I never really understood that until now, having gone through norm therapy and understanding that, in fact, wounded bird comes from if you've grown up in perhaps a dysfunctional environment, you don't always know that your normal is potentially or maybe toxic, because in the first 7 years of our life, we're just going through like we're being affected by all of the outside stimuli. We have no idea the impact that the first 7 years has and conditions us for the rest of our adult life and childhood. So to speak to that, I just want to quickly mention that if you are trying to get help, the care in which you get that help is so critically important. And you need to be around people that actually know how to help you. In my case, I was going to counselors who perhaps didn't have the know-how to actually call me out when I was lying to them. And the fact that I was a pathological liar. And, those narcissistic tendencies that I adopted and I took into all my relationships, but I never knew that. I just knew what my normal, dysfunctional normal was. So it's no wonder that victimhood can take on sort of its own animal of being really ugly, really damaging to relationships, and oftentimes just causing you and yourself so much pain, along with being kind of that wrecking ball around everyone else as well.
I understand. Well, that's a lot to say. So how many different kinds of abuses were you suffering over the course of your life?
So going through the list, it was at 18. Everything from narcissism, sexual, physical, psychological, financial, child abuse, self-abuse, isolation, workplace, cyberbullying, bullying, medical, religious. I'm sure there's a couple.
Well, let's go back to narcissistic
Yeah.
abuse. Start there. You underwent how shall I say, experiences with people who proved themselves to be quite narcissists. People close to you, people in relationships, and on over the years. I don't have to really bring up too many names of people and all of that in this particular setting, but you were surrounded by narcissism throughout various periods of your life. What happened to you as a result of going from one narcissistic relationship to another over and over? What do you think that caused you so far as problems are concerned?
Oh gosh, so many problems. I think it escalated and it just got worse and worse over time. And the problem is I kept trying to run from my problems. I had convinced myself that as long as I don't deal with it, I won't have to ever deal with it. But when I was dealing with it, I was dealing with it on my terms and my conditions, which meant, which is very narcissistic, going to counseling, but then telling, of course, the counselor what they want to hear, and them thinking that you're just this charming human being that has it all together. And I'd leave feeling good. And then about an hour later, life would kick in, and I'd be reminded that, you know, I'm still pretty screwed up. So why is this not working? But at the same time, never actually sitting down and taking inventory on what my role and my responsibility was. And I can say that without a shadow of the doubt, when you took me through norm therapy, mind you, without me knowing at the time, it feels like a decade ago, but it was only about 6 years ago. And you were the first person that said, Kelly, you're a pathological liar. And of course, that didn't go over well. As you know, I hung up on you and kind of took a break from talking. But then something just struck me kind of like a lightning bolt and reminded me that, you know what, Kelly, you are not on a great path. And something in your life, well, really everything that you're doing is not working. So how about we, the little angel on my shoulder was telling me this, that maybe I should listen to you. And I think when I finally just kind of like broke down and gave it over to God, which is really part of that transformative process that I experienced, I realized very quickly that there was so much truth in what you were saying. And then from there, you obviously took me down the path of the 3 tenets of norm therapy: clarity, assessment, and truth. And you called me out repeatedly. I mean, probably thousands of times. You called me out when I was lying, and I didn't even know I was lying. And I
No.
think that was the game changer, that where a lot of people that go through norm therapy sessions or our NTIS candidate training, that's when they start to see, and you see that light bulb go off in their head where they're like, oh my gosh, either they discovered that they in fact experienced abuse and never knew it. How many times have we had that happen where we
Okay.
have a member come in and they're like, I've never experienced abuse in my life. And we're like, well, not trying to say or guide anybody to any outcomes or conclusions. But the more that and the longer that I've been in this field, the more that I can say unequivocally, everyone has had something impactful, traumatic, difficult, challenging happen to them. And there is no way you can go through life unscathed. So whatever
Absolutely.
it is sorry, last thing,
No,
whatever
good.
it is
It's okay. Keep going.
that's
Disagreeing
that
with.
thing, let's identify it. Let's put some meat on the bones, as you say, and let's define what it is that's causing you that pain or that struggle so you can get out of your way and be successful.
Absolutely. I mean, that's a very positive outlook. And I'm sure our audience is especially after we grow traction, and will see this video and they'll say, wow, this is such an amazing person. So you became the global executive director of Arrow, Abuse Refuge Org, which is the nonprofit. And how do you bring your brand of happiness but effectiveness to everyone else in the organization?
Yeah, and that's something I'm working at every day. But I will tell you that we have, and this is something I am so proud of, but we've created an empathetic and charismatic culture at Arrow. And you don't see that in a lot of organizations, at least speaking from my own experience. But a lot of organizations out there may even like put it on their billboards and say that they do the things, but then when you get into the sort of weeds of it all, you don't really see that or have that experience. Um, if you just take a poll or interview some of our team members, a lot of them will come back and say that we've really worked hard to establish that type of atmosphere. And I will tell you that part of embodying that is we have to practice what we preach. If I'm going to tell everybody to do something, then I for darn sure better be doing it myself. I could
Absolutely.
never have said that in the past. I would preach one thing and I'd be off doing something totally different. So to be in a place where I take what we do very seriously, we we have the lives of victims and survivors in our hands. And in some cases, we're keeping them alive for that minute, for that hour, for that day. And we're trying to get to them to that point where they can go on and be very successful. Um, but I think it's so critically important that, as in all leadership, that anything that you're telling people to do, you're doing it yourself. And I
Absolutely. Leading by example, I would say.
absolutely, yeah.
So tell me, you always have this term or this phrase ready. And I've heard it 1,000 times, and I'm sure everyone at the company has as well. But I want you to explain it to our audience. What is the why that makes you cry?
Yeah, great question. So if you've had a job that doesn't bring you joy or doesn't fill your cup, um, the older that I get, the more that I ask myself in my later years, what what is it that brings me joy? Am I doing what makes me passionate? Why that makes you cry was something that I actually heard from Joyce Meyer a while back. It was a quote, or I heard it in a podcast. And she said that in order to live your life to its fullest, you need to find your why that makes you cry. And all that really means is when you wake up every day, are you serving the needs of other people, or are you serving the needs of what bring you pleasure, joy, happiness, um, giving back? And I realized when I was sharing my story for the first time, I was doing my why that made me cry because what we do is not easy, and we're surrounded by people that are suffering. So it's like, how do you pull yourself out of being the energizer bunny and the cheerleader for everyone else if you can't be the cheerleader for yourself? So in essence, I think this is a call to action for everyone, because there's a recent stat I saw that said that 95% of people do not enjoy their jobs. In fact, they hate their jobs. And that absolutely blew my mind. But when I think back to it, I'm like, well, when I was in corporate America, I actually did hate kind of every second of it, but it was necessary growth, and it brought a lot of education. But at the same time, it also brought me a lot of what I do like and what I don't like. And when we created Arrow together, I was able to pull all the stuff that I did like into creating and fostering our empathetic, charismatic environment.
And
So
I've heard from most of the volunteers and employees at the organization that this is probably one of the best environments they've ever worked in. How do you think we've managed to pull that off?
embodying, practicing what we preach, I think if I got on my totem pole or high horse, and then live like a double life, who's going to take me seriously? But I can say finally now, I'm really proud that anything I ask anyone else to do, I'm going to do it myself. And I know how to do it. But I'm going to guide everybody I can in a place, from a place of compassion. But earlier you asked me, and I didn't answer it, was about how we guide people without letting them kind of like take advantage in a sense. And
Yes.
that is something that is hard to totally what's the word? Like I'm always figuring out how to
Achieve.
massage that better. But
I mean,
you
achieve.
yeah, and you have to give people the creative freedom to do the things that they're passionate about. And I would say what makes Arrow different in that sense is first, we deeply care about you. Um, we actually give a damn, which is honestly, excuse my language, but so many corporations out there say they care about you, but when push comes to shove and you're dealing with something so extraordinary happening in your life in a negative way, and all they care about is getting your tasks done or getting your projects done, we tell you to take time off. We tell you to like do the things that you need to take care of yourself first. Family first, take self-care. Those are sort of the focus points that I never felt that in other organizations. So in terms of establishing that, but then also making it clear, like here are our expectations. These are what we expect out of you. And if you can't honor or follow them, we just ask that you tell us. We're not tyrants. We're not trying to like exact out of you things that we know maybe you're not able to do. But like we're all volunteers, we're working hard together for a great cause. Like let's join and link arms and come together. So I
It's a
think
great answer. I like that very much. Let me ask you a question about the leadership at the organization. What do you think of your current leadership that you have working at Abuse Refuge Org? Tell us about them.
our leadership is like nothing on the planet. And of course, I am not biased at all
Of course.
whatsoever.
But go ahead,
But
be biased,
but
please.
being in other positions and seeing other leadership in other corporations, I think, and again, I'm speaking from corporate America versus nonprofit. So 12 years in corporate, 6 years in nonprofit, and I knew nothing about nonprofits prior to Arrow. I thought going to the food bank was like, that's a nonprofit. That's how I defined it. But I will tell you that in terms of leadership, what makes Arrow, I think, just so phenomenal is that we have people who deeply, deeply care for each other. I mean, above and beyond like what you could ever ask in an employee or a volunteer. And we're all volunteers. Like I have to say that because even if we were you know in a volunteer space, when you have people that are on different time zones working around the clock as far as the Philippine 12-hour time difference, and they're waking up at they're working opposite hours, responding to messages, making time for Arrow before or after work. Um, that says a lot, like you can't pay people in a corporate environment to do that, but yet we have people that really do believe in helping and doing good for these people who just need help and need the guidance of a norm therapist or Arrow to kind of shake them up and start to challenge them of what their belief system is. So
Well,
yeah, our leadership is phenomenal.
you have, I think, currently around 100 volunteers at the organization of
Yeah.
varying in all walks of life. But you've had up to 240 or 50 at any given time over the years having the nonprofit. How have you been able to manage all these people and that door that swings both ways, people coming and going, coming and going? How have that affected the organization and its effectiveness, even if it has? Please tell us.
Yeah, so we've learned so much just through trial and error. And we learned at one point when we did have that many 240 team members, we were like, we don't need 240 team members. Like this is too much. This is almost like we didn't have enough for them to do. So and a part of that was that we didn't have well, we realized that if we actually scaled it down to right around 100 team members, that was kind of like the perfect number for us to be able to manage well, to be able to support, to have enough projects and tasks for them to do. And we've also evolved in what departments we've had too, because we've experimented with some departments are really hard to fill, and other departments we get just an influx of applicants.
Plug right now. Plug. Which departments are hard to fill?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean,
Fundraising, I know is one of them.
fundraising, business development, public relations. Some of these we've kind of put on a pause and we'll revisit later, but our primary focus right now is to go viral on our socials. And we've been working around the clock trying to sort of organically grow our following through, of course, this live stream, and then the video series that we have going on of You Know You're Being Abused When, that actually you created. And I love it. I think from the audience perspective, we've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that. I think where we still need help is just getting that reach out there and in the hands of people who can spread the word on their, million followers about us and show that the good work that we're doing really is giving and providing hope. We're breathing life into other people, which is part of our tagline at Arrow of Breathe Life. And most importantly, we're giving people a reason to live and to go on to thrive, which I can't think of a better thing to empower other people with.
I have a question for you. What do you think, Kelly? What do you think of what's the difference between norm therapy and traditional therapy?
Yeah, great question. So I kind of share my story when I discuss the differences about that. But okay, let me just back up. So traditional norm therapy is all about abuse care. Traditional therapy is all about mental health. And in traditional therapy, if you don't seek the right counselor, something I kind of mentioned at the beginning, then you're kind of putting yourself in the hands of somebody who could potentially end up hurting you more. And I say that with a sort of a disclaimer, because if that person doesn't know that you're lying to them, then you are going to continue to believe your own lies and BS, which then actually manifests itself into a much darker animal of yourself, because now you're thinking, oh, well, my counselor believes what I'm saying, so that co-signs me to go keep doing my rotten and vile activities. Now, if you have somebody like a norm therapist where they see and they are paying attention to your every word and your body language and your gestures and your reactions, and they have been trained to identify your baseline, which is something that you would learn about in our training, you have the ability to come to calling that person out and saying, you know what, I think we need to relook at this. And there are techniques that we actually use to help them uncover the truth, assess that truth, and gain clarity on their situations. In a traditional therapy situation, there's really no guarantee that or timeline for getting well. It's easy to get on a couch, sit there for an hour and talk about everything that's wrong with everyone else in the world, taking no responsibility for yourself. And then you leave and you're like, okay, well, kind of got an adrenaline rush from that, but what did I actually gain? Like, am I a better human being? No. I was prescribed a bunch of medications that I didn't need. This was something that happened to me. And I can really say that I tried. Like, I gave it a fair shot in terms of trying out different counselors, but all of them came back to me and were like, you really got together. You're just around, you know, um, some toxic people. But I wasn't armed with like, okay, what do I do? What action steps do I take? Um, you know, there were so many things that I realized like I could be on the couch for the next 30 years and probably not make any progress. With norm therapy, we try to literally, proverbial speaking, get you off the couch within a matter of 15 to 20 sessions, which honestly, I think is unheard of. I have never heard of any other type of therapy where their goal is to get you up and running and on your own as soon as in that type of a quick turnaround. Usually it's years before they'll say that they can provide any real viable solutions. And then even then, I think the danger here too that I have to mention is if you become codependent on your counselor for your existence, what does that make them? Then now that's an unhealthy relationship that we've seen. Actually, there was a situation where a lady had been going to the same counselor for 30 years. The counselor tragically died. There was another situation where the counselor went out of practice, retired, and some of these individuals were just left completely lost because they had given all of their brain housing group, as you like to say, over to their counselor for thinking for them. And
Yes,
we are strong opponents to that. We empower people to help them find their normal and establish their path through the guidance of a norm therapist. Um,
absolutely.
and I think that there's just we have a long disclaimer that we are not medical professionals, la 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 la. But you know what? The the really interesting component of this is how many of our team, both team members who have participated in norm therapy and outside victims or survivors who have gotten this service, have told us that they saw more change in like 5 sessions than they saw in multiple years with a counselor. So I think it all goes back to being trained correctly, to knowing how to actually help the population that's in need, and being able to educate them in a way that they're able to challenge their own beliefs and not just co-sign their own rubbish, I guess you could say, or their own faulty wiring because they just don't know better. So I'm letting
Exactly.
them off the hook by saying that too.
So tell us what did you mean by the term hand up instead of handout?
Yeah. Well, actually, that's a term I give you credit for.
But you
Um,
use it all the time. So tell us what does that feel like to you? What does that mean?
yeah, so I think of like the analogy of going to a shelter, homeless shelter. In that case, you're giving them a handout. You're giving them food for another meal. Yeah, you're giving them maybe encouragement and helping to brighten their day. But at the end of the day, a hand up is like teaching a person to fish. Once they know how to fish, they can get all the fish that they need. They're not just in need of that one meal or that one handout to survive. So, hand ups at Arrow are all about educating, providing everything that you need to be able to be self sufficient, to be strong in who you are, and to be able to go out into the world and impart your knowledge then on to other people, which we've seen happen a lot. Like there's, I wouldn't say there's little Michael Gibsons running around, but there are people that now speak the vernacular that you have, to include myself, when it comes to um, showcasing how we help people and how we're helping them differently than just a kind of one-time box sort of check.
Checkbox, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so during your normal course of life throughout the week, when it comes time for your me time, what do you normally do?
Yeah. So self-care is something that's so important that we talk a lot about at Arrow. For myself personally, I have found pleasures in simple things. Like actually, we have a local farmers market that I go to on the weekends during the warmer months. It's actually opening back up this weekend, which I'm thrilled by. It's kind of like a slice of heaven, just seeing, all the fresh produce and all of the lovely little shops that are up, or tents that are up. But also, I think for me, I really enjoy going outside, going on nature hikes, riding my bike, cooking. Cooking is actually,
I'm about to go there. I'm about to go
I
there.
was gonna say, yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of
Tell
things,
us, go
but
ahead. Tell us about the cooking. Tell us about cooking. We're
well,
going.
I was gonna also just mention journaling and breathing exercises. That's something that if you have suffered with severe anxiety like I have, um, calming yourself down is something that is so talked about, but I think a lot of people overlook the impact that it really does have on people. It's crippling. Like once you get in your head and you cannot get out of that hamster wheel of death, I like to call it.
Despair and
Yeah,
stress, all of
it,
that.
it's awful. It's debilitating. So I've really come to appreciate the value of like dumping all my thoughts into a journal. Of course, exercise, working out, but also I would say cooking, which we're gonna talk about next.
Well, that's good. I think that those breathing exercises as well are very empowering. You,
Yeah,
I know you do that, and that's something I do as well, breathing exercises to find that equilibrium and get oxygenated, if you will. Oxygen will work wonders, and
yep,
most
that
people
makes
don't know.
all the
But
difference.
let's get to my favorite conversation. I know that you are in your past life a person who, yeah, you ate out most of the time. You cooked every now and then, but it wasn't really your thing.
Yeah,
But your mom, if I remember correctly, had a catering business for many years, and you grew up around food. And
yeah,
it wasn't really pushed on you, in my estimation, of being a, let's say, a chef or having that kind of business. And you didn't really have the affinity for all of that as being the direction in life you wanted to go. Then something happened. Tell us what happened. What made you the cook or the quasi chef that you are today?
that is such a crazy story, but not really so crazy. It's funny in your adult life where you start to discover what your true passions are. And you always thought that they were one thing, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I am more like my mom than I thought I was, or I am more like my dad, or wow, I never knew, this part of me, even this interest even existed. And it's so funny because I grew up around my mom, who, as you mentioned, was a chef, had a catering company. And I was always cooking for her, but I was doing stuff like grilling chicken out on the outside grill, or doing little things, or going shopping for her, not really involved in the preparation of actual cooking. I was very intimidated by it. So I was kind of like, I'll get out of the way, I'll go clean the dishes, like I'll do all the side stuff. And then when we would go to catering events, like I would oftentimes like run the floor, make sure the bride was okay, doing all the stuff like making sure that servers had everything they needed. I was also serving too, but I never ever had a clue because I was so intimidated by it. Um, that cooking could end up being one of my most favorite and treasured activities. And I have to back up a little bit because food abuse was something that was part of a reward system for me. And without going into too much detail, I overate for every meal. And that was how I dealt with my pain, dealt with things that were happening to me. I ate my feelings, I ate my emotions. And I never knew that I was, in essence, filling myself both physically and emotionally um, to the point where I was actually causing problems for my health. I was eating things that didn't agree with me, and I was making myself actually really sick. I always was like in and out of the doctor for something. I had no clue and never correlated any of it to food. And I've come to learn in my adult life that I actually have a dairy allergy and I'm lactose intolerant. And once I made those changes, I saw a remarkable difference in everything from body change to how I felt, not stuffing myself. And then from there, it kind of took on another another
Life.
deep where I learned how to cook. And partially I was kind of forced into it with COVID. But also a little bit prior to that, a couple years prior to that, I had been ordering like a food service where they make the meals and all you got to do is literally put it on the stovetop and cook it. And I was like, gosh, this is expensive. Like these cups, I could probably go to Costco or a grocery store and make these. And so I then started to explore making really simple things. And I say to anybody who's intimidated in the kitchen like I was, I had like a serious fear of cooking. I mean, boiling water was like a thing. And it's funny because you build on it. It's kind of like being an artist. Like you don't just wake up and you're suddenly Van Gogh. Like you build on your skills and you take little steps. So maybe for one meal, you know, you're making eggs. Okay, cool, easy. And then the next time, maybe you want to try a different way to make your eggs. Or maybe you want to add different seasonings or sauces, and then you add, couple, let's say, that egg with potatoes. So over time, I just learned a lot of different ways, primarily by a simple Google search and finding, those things that made me feel good, which is important. You want to you really truly are what you eat. And I think even at the cellular level, most people don't even realize that the food that you're digesting and putting into your mouth is what fuels you. So if you eat
Mhm.
Doritos every day for every meal or live on candy, that's going to affect and impair your mental capacity and every aspect of your life. So, that's the beautiful thing about the journey I think that we all go through in life is having the capacity to learn new skills that were like either in dormant or we just never even knew we were capable of.
When
Um,
you peel off some of the layers of stress and abuse and you find a little clarity, your
yeah,
soul automatically look for something else to fill those voids because you just peeled all those belief systems that you once had away. And it's quite natural. It's human nature to want to occupy that space with something healthier. And I think you've done that. I think you've done a great job. But I'm to a point in our interview, we're 15 minutes before we're going to complete it. But We have two questions from the audience, and I want to ask you one before I go to another subject. Is that okay with you?
Of course.
Good. Considering that not everyone can commit as much time and dedication as they do to their own jobs and other obligations, is it difficult to work with all volunteers?
You know, great question. I would say the answer is not really, because thankfully we have enough volunteers that between all the different time zones that we're operating between, that we're able to make it work. And I accredit some of our platforms to making that all possible. Like back in the day when we first started Arrow together, we were old school, and that was only, just 6 years ago, but it feels like a decade ago, when we were using WhatsApp and Microsoft To Do when we just had a few team members. But now that we use a couple larger platforms where we can communicate effectively and assign tasks and manage them in a manner, we've been able to be successful and make it feasible for our needs. Now, of course, in the future, when we do have full-time paid staff, this will evolve a lot, not necessarily in terms of the platforms, but in terms of how we, like, what our expectations are, and having more hours dedicated from our employees each week. We'll be able to get things done probably quicker. We'll be able to, of course, accomplish more. But in all volunteer organization, I'm happy and pleased with what we're doing. So
And I know I am as well. I'm hoping you said that. So which leads me into my next question. What do you do if a victim slash survivor needs more than the standard amount of sessions? What do you do?
yeah, well,
Norm
we
therapy sessions, I mean.
yeah, so the first thing is, it depends on whether we're offering the sessions free of charge or whether we've given them a grant, or what the situation is around that. But let's say that in this scenario, we've offered, like in the beginning, we were giving all sessions away free of charge. We were giving about 20 sessions away, which is unheard of. Where can you go to counseling and get 20 free sessions? I've never seen that before personally. But of course, you can purchase additional sessions. We are always looking for creative ways to be able to offer the most help that we can. But there's also, ways in which that they can continue to, and we're actually working on and developing that, like workbooks to go along with their sessions so they can have that as reference.
Mhm.
Um, they're held to accountability. They can come in and they can even do recurring check-in sessions. Maybe they don't have the ability to purchase sessions weekly, but maybe they can come, on a time frame that aligns with what they're able to afford. So we try to accommodate everybody the best that we can.
One of the things I want to bring to mind here is during these times when we're bringing on people, um, we've just gone to a for-profit model for the organization, and we're starting to implement it now. So people have to understand we're providing a very comprehensive service, and for the lack of a better term, it works. Now, it doesn't satisfy us oftentimes to the fullest extent of what we're expecting to get out of it for the people we're helping, but it doesn't always satisfy them either. But most of what we can get the clutter out of their lives and help them start to see clarity and stop lying to themselves. The young lady with the bloodied eye and cracked lip and a couple of broken ribs saying, he loves me. When we can get them out of that victim mentality, I think that's a good thing. I think that we reached an objective in getting them off of that kind of problem. But then what do you do after that impact of all that abuse? How do we help them, moving forward? And I think we've covered many victims and survivors over the past that we've been able to help. do that as well. What are some of the testimonials that you've heard, recorded, and seen in our organization from victims and survivors of abuse, principally, and even some of our norm therapists? What are some of the accolades you've heard that you could repeat here?
Um, you know, one that really stands out in my mind was an individual who was kind of in a life or death situation and called upon Arrow, and we dropped everything at a moment's notice to accommodate this individual, to keep this person alive, and to go on to equip them with the ability of them knowing what their true worth and value was in a very short amount of time. Um, Again, in traditional counseling, and this is not a, I don't want my message today to be like, oh my gosh, all counselors are the worst and it doesn't work. No, not at all. There is a lot of great counseling out there. I'm only speaking to the fact that what we focus on and what we do is all about catering ourselves to abuse care, which is very different than mental health. And I want to make that distinction very clear because a lot of people come into thinking that they go into counseling with one idea, and when they don't have or get the help that they need, they feel even more disheartened about how to survive their circumstances and how to get through the impossible situations that a lot of people have found themselves in when they are in the throes of a circumstance that just cripples you to your knees. So we have so many testimonials that I'm like, my brain is kind of rapid firing with
Really?
them.
We do have a lot of testimonials. Wow.
We do have them, posted on our socials. I think another really cool aspect of this part of our education process, and I did mention it earlier, was just asking people to take a look and do an inventory on their life and actually pause and reflect. And then when they read about our 21 abuses on our website, so many of them come back and tell us, like, share stories of, oh my gosh, like, I really think I was abused and I never had anybody to talk about this with. And so the other component of what we try to bring to the table is in our company meetings and in our meetings in general, we talk about the stuff that you would never talk about ever. At least I never did in a corporate environment. I mean, we're talking not like, hey, share your deepest, darkest secrets. We're not going for that. But what we are going for is being transparent, being clear, not putting on a facade, telling us that everything,
Authentic.
yeah, being authentic, um, coming as you are, and pulling off that facade layer that everybody has when they're trying to present themselves as okay and they really aren't. I've cried on camera more times than I can count during meetings because we talk about really impactful stuff. And, at the end of the day, we want to be different. We want to stand out and we want to breathe life into other people. And if we're doing anything less than that or short of that, then we're not doing our jobs. So I take it, yeah, very seriously in what we do.
I definitely know and have witnessed you work tirelessly. I mean, sometimes you don't even take those days off and get a little me time. I've watched you do that over the past few years. Very proud of you, but those days need to come to an end so you can have more me time. And in that, I want to ask a two-part question. First, why are nonprofits necessary? And two, do you work on donations?
Yeah. So why nonprofits are so important is just something that I have come to discover in the last since Arrow started, 6 years. And that is when you are coming together for a cause, and it doesn't have to be Arrow. So this isn't just a plug for Arrow. It can be anything that you're passionate about. Maybe you survived cancer. Maybe, you found yourself homeless and now you want to go give back and help build homes. Like whatever it is, that conviction that you have. Nonprofits bring people together for a particular cause to not only share values, but also to spread the good word and doing good things for the betterment of other people. And I think in our rapid pace and environment today, we find ourselves so often lost in the day-to-day minutia that we lose sight of like what we as the human race are here to do. And whether your passion is climate change, like it doesn't matter, but spend just a few hours a week and make time to impart your wisdom, share your knowledge, share your story. You don't have to be the smartest crayon in the box, but everybody has a story, whether it's a homeless man sharing his story or it's the president of the United States. It doesn't matter. We
I want
all have stories to share. So
we can go
yeah,
on and on. I know we
I
can talk about this for hours, and sometimes we do. But donations are very important to the organization because this is how we stay afloat and how we make things happen. So, what would you say to the world? Because I have a final question for you before I go to my remarks. Is what would you say that is important about donations to our audience?
Yeah, I mean, donations are what keep us alive. We're all volunteers. So we've had that question asked a lot, like how are our donations being used? And they're being used to keep all of the platforms that we use day in, day out going. They go to pay for actually being able to offer our services to victims and survivors of abuse through norm therapy. And there's a little bit of an education to understanding what we do, because most people don't make the connection between what Arrow does and what norm therapy is. It kind of gets like merged together. So I encourage anybody who wants to learn more, we can either have a conversation and explain it in layman's terms, or we, of course, go to our website, goarrow.org, and you can learn about all of that in great detail. How our
Make a
money is
donation
used.
at
Of
the top of the
course,
website.
make
Make a
donation. Yeah.
Uh,
But
let, let we got 2 minutes left, and I need to tell a secret. Sometimes Kelly calls me in the middle of her Saturday or something, and she's in her car. She's driving around town with a bunch of bags. And I'm like, what are you doing? Almost every week for the past 5 or 6 years, she goes out and she delivers food to the homeless. She finds random people on the street. She drives up to them and hands them food. She'll make, because she loves cooking. And I wanted to just tell your secret to the world. And I'm so proud of you. It actually wells me up a little bit to even mention it about you because it's such a wonderful thing that you do for people. Perfect strangers. Every single week I've watched you do it. Tell us what does that put your heart before I close this out?
it's kind of like it brings me back to earth. Like we all get in our head, we all can be really hard on ourselves. And there's something about cooking a nice meal and being able to take that to a person who's in need and see a smile on their face and them well up, or them go, oh my gosh, I needed this, or I wow, you just made my day. And I always try to put like a little sort of, I call it a love note in the bags. So it's like you're seen, you're heard, you're valued, you're appreciated. And no matter what you have going on in your life, it is never too late to give them yes, in this case, it is a handout, but in essence, it's also a hand up for them to have that self-belief that it's never too late for them to live their best life.
Well, with
So
that, Kelly, I don't want to cut you off, but we're going to run out of time. I could do this all day with you. Thank you for being on the show today, Kelly, and I'm sure we'll see you in our panels and other interviews online. We'll have more and different kind of topics to cover in the future. Not everything we do is about abuse, but then again, it is in some way or another. But we really appreciate it, your candidness. You have such a great demeanor. You look great on a camera, very appealing. We had quite a few people show up to see you. And I'm looking forward to our next interview. And with that, I'm going to say this. If you've enjoyed and got something out of today's session, please support us by sharing this video, subscribing to our channel, making comments, of course, and liking it. Please go to goaro.org and normtherapy.com. Explore our opportunities and seek help for yourself or someone needing our services, our norm therapy service. If you're interested in applying to participate in our live sessions, please contact us at contact@normtherapy.com. And if you're interested in becoming a norm therapist, go to the same email address, contact@normtherapy.com. Thank you for joining, and we look forward to seeing you again this Sunday, May 5th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I'll be interviewing Ruchika Harbanda, and HR coordinator with Abuse Refuge Org. Thank you very much. Kelly, you want to close us out with anything?
yeah, so there's a quote that I live by, and I would love to share it. It's actually a quote by Mother Teresa, and it's make your lives centers of compassion and forgive endlessly. Let no one come to you without coming away better and happier. Our world needs that. So let's
Absolutely.
all try today to find joy, spread happiness, and ultimately make this world a better place that we're all a part of. And with
Thank
that,
you.
I
Thank you
say
for being on board today, Kelly, and I look forward to seeing you soon and talking with you again. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have a great day.
thank you.